since fall, September of 1978. Been at this for a very, very long time. I've talked to hundreds of people who claim to have seen it. I've talked to people who have found their tracks. I've seen footprints on many occasions myself, alleged footprints, and I tend to believe a good number of them are possibly authentic. I have interviewed hundreds of people, and in all that time, have I ever seen this creature myself? My answer to that is maybe. And in the summer of 2005, on the west side of Harrison Lake, approximately going up a 20-mile bay area, West Harrison Lake, I was taking the property night watchman there back home. I saw a figure about a mile away on a cut line, power cut line, disappearing into the trees on the right-hand side. If that was a man, no, I have not seen a Sasquatch. If that was a Sasquatch, then yes, I've seen it. But it's too far away to see any details, so that's why I don't say for sure that I've seen a Sasquatch. One thing you'll know about me, learn more about me, I have one philosophy in research, just one, and that is stick to the facts and never deviate from the facts. For me, that is what all researchers, who anyone wants to get involved in this kind of research, must keep to heart. Stick to the facts, never deviate from facts, and keep a healthy dose of skepticism. Skepticism is the best quality a researcher into this phenomenon can have. Skepticism, a lot of people think that's just people who just don't want to see the facts in front of their eyes. Not necessarily. Skepticism is a great quality, because if you're not a skeptic, and I don't mean a skeptic is a closed mind, but you have a skeptical attitude towards reports of the Sasquatch, and you don't have that attitude, and you just accept everything on face value, then you're not really a researcher. In my opinion, you're an advocate. You know, and there's far too much of that going on. An advocate, like a religious leader trying to push a faith, than a researcher trying to solve a mystery. It's the best way to describe it. And we've got all kinds of stuff like that now. I mean, all you have to do, and I'm sure all you have, is look on the internet, especially south of the border, and Bigfoot is everywhere. Yeah, I saw Bigfoot. He picked the car up and he threw it in the river. Yeah, Bigfoot. He lives in my backyard. I give him garlic out the back door. How long has this been going on? 10 years. Have you taken any pictures? No. I did photograph the stick it dropped. That kind of thing. I mean, there's something wrong with the story. I mean, and it's just overwhelming. I like to say, and I get getting in trouble for this, I like to say, Sasquatch in research today more resembles an asylum that's been taken over by the inmates than anything else. And all you have to do is spend a couple of days on the internet, a couple of days on YouTube, or listen to Coast radio for a month to know what I'm talking about. I mean, it is just full of absolute mind-boggling nonsense. But on a lighter side, there's still ongoing cases of people in everyday lives coming across things and seeing things that absolutely have them spellbound. People who see the unbelievable for a few moments. They tell one or two friends about it. They're immediately told they're crazy, so they decide to shut up about it. And this ongoing phenomenon has been continuous here in the west coast of British Columbia since long before the Europeans first came. Our First Nation people all have different stories and legends and mythology and oral history concerning creatures of the Sasquatch. As a matter of fact, the name Sasquatch itself, well, I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get into the presentation. But that's just one name. There was all kinds of them, opened up and down the coast. You know, the Skookum, the Oma, the Bookwas, the Sonnequan. I mean, that's just a few. The name Sasquatch itself was actually a Caucasian word because a man named J.W. Burns, who heard the stories from his friends on the Chehalis Reserve just near Harrison Mills here, he mispronounced the word and he spelt it wrong. And that story came out in 1929 in Maclean's magazine in America. Sasquatch goes way, way back. It goes back generations upon generations, hundreds of years. It was well known among First Nations or Native Americans, as they're called south of the border, long before the Europeans ever set foot in this part of North American continent. They all had different beliefs about it. They all had different opinions on what the creature was capable of. They all had different beliefs of where they came from, what their relationship to them was. But they were all basically talking about the same thing. Sonic, book was, home, like this mask itself was carved in the early 1930s on the Chehalis Reserve. It was just recently repatriated, and they use it now in their ceremonies. It was in the Vancouver Museum for years, and it's just been returned. It is known as the Sasquatch face mask. Sasquatch was the kind of the word, or Saskahe, or Sasquatch. That's how the Chehalis people used to pronounce the word before a man named J.W. Burns wrote that article in Maclean's magazine, and the name Sasquatch just stuck. It's been known as Sasquatch ever since. But all First Nation culture all up and down the West Coast. This is a totem that's on display in the museum in Victoria. That is the Sunakwa, or the wild woman of the woods. If you ever see a totem of the Sunakwa, she always has whistling, pierced lips. She's also known as the cannibal woman. She was kind of used as a boogeyman. First Nation culture, she was kind of used as a boogeyman to keep kids in line. Don't go into certain areas in the woods. Don't go there, that there, or the Sunakwa will get you. She will pick you up, she will take you away, and she will eat you. So basically, in many cultural aspects in First Nation history, the Sasquatch wasn't the male that people were told to avoid and dread. It was the female. They were nasty. They would take you away, and they would feed on you, things like that. That was the kind of the way the oral history went. And of course, we have the male, the bookwas, and this koala mask from Queen Charlotte Islands. I believe they're no longer called this Queen Charlotte Islands, are they? And what's the name now? Haida Gwaii. Everything changes. Yeah. And this is the koala mask from Haida Gwaii. It is the mask of the bookwas, which is basically the male, and the Sunakwa is the female of the creature that we now commonly refer to as Sasquatch. And again, the bookwas was rather passive compared to the female. He may have come in and steal something every now and then, or make off with a maiden every now and then, or something like that. But he didn't eat people. The female did. Sunakwa did. I guess he was a vegetarian. But in folklore and mythology and First Nations oral history, if you ever look back, you see the Sunakwa, they're talking about the female, the bookwas are talking about the male. And that is, now we both just use the term Sasquatch. And of course there were many other names, of course, too, all up and down the West Coast. Northern California, the Oma, the Skookum in Oregon, the Mountain Devil in Washington. That's been credited to First Nation sources too, but I don't quite really go along with that. I think that was an early settlers, because I don't believe the First Nations had any concept of the devil until the Europeans came here. I don't know, so why would they use the term Mountain Devil? I have no idea, but that's how the story goes. Now, we all have what we call the classic tales. And you've all heard the classic stories. The Albert Ostman capture, the Ape Canyon attack, the Ruby Creek incident, those kind of stories. Of course, the Patterson Gimlin film would be class as one now, in my opinion. Yeah. But this is one of the local ones. incidents here. It's known as the Ruby Creek incident. Ruby Creek, the Chapman property on Ruby Creek, which is just, 40 minutes from here along Highway 7 and between Agassiz and Hope, if you know where Ruby Creek is. In 1941, when this incident occurred, the Lougheed Highway didn't exist. It wasn't there. All there was a little dirt road that maringled around and lined circles all through the First Nation Reserve there. And the railway was there. The railway tracks were there. They existed. That's how most people got there, walking along the railway tracks or going down the river by boat. And Mrs. Jenny Chapman was living, and her family, Mr. George Chapman, were living in this house on this piece of property right on the banks of the Fraser River in 1941. Now, the story goes that Mrs. Jenny Chapman was washing dishes when one of her 3 children walked in and said, "Mommy, Mommy, there's a strange cow coming out of the trees." Mrs. Chapman didn't know what she was talking about. So she walked out of the house and she could see this thing just inside the tree line moving around, and it came out into the clearing because it was like a small acreage clearing here between the tree line and the house and the riverbed, especially in 41. Well, she didn't know what to make of this thing. All she knew is there was no darn way it was a cow. That's the property as it was photographed, as it looked with John Green photographed it in 1957. It's close to 15 years after the incident occurred, which was 1941. Now, Mrs. Chapman came out of the house and she saw this thing walking towards the house, and she basically described it as an 8-foot, hair-covered, man-like thing that had rather light brown colored hair. She described it as a teak color. I guess that would be close to that piece of wood going along, trimming going along the wall here, close to that color. She described it as a teak color, a tea color. And the skin was jet black. And the creature was approaching the house. So she gathered up the kids, ran into the house, ran out the back door of the house. She covered the kids with a blanket, went down to the riverbank, and scooted off along the cemetery into the main reserve, back up into the railway tracks, and headed high Hilton for the main building in the community of Ruby Creek. Well, a guy named Tiffany was working a rail line with 2 other men. And all he remembers is this woman running down the railway tracks with a kid screaming, "The Sasquatch is after me." So Mr. Tiffany was wondering what the heck she was talking about, and he talked to her. And she had calmed her down a little bit. When she went on her way, they had an old-fashioned hand pump cart that was still in use in 1941. Remember, this is 41. Canada was at war. The United States was still 3 months away from war before the attack of Pearl Harbor. So he and his 2 buddies, and his 2 colleagues, pumped down to the front of the part of the tracks closer to the property. They went and investigated. And what they found, they didn't see any sign of the creature, but what they did find was the tracks coming across the garden through what was a potato patch, circling the house, looked like it may have gone into the house, and circled the house again, and came out to where there was a lean-to, which doesn't exist when this picture was taken, but used to lean against that side of the house, which had several barrels of salted salmon in it. And one of these barrels of salted salmon had the lid torn off, and they assumed that whatever it was sampled the fish, didn't like what it tasted, and it dumped the contents out all over the place. And then the track sort of went off down to the riverside, where they assumed it was probably trying to wash the salted salmon taste out of its mouth. And then the tracks made a beeline straight back across this property, straight through to the trees, and just through those trees a little ways is the railroad CPR line that goes right through that area. And that was in use today. Now, today, Highway 7, the Lougheed Highway, is in behind these trees, and the tracks are in between the highway and this property. But the road wasn't there in 41 when this happened. And that's where the tracks went. Mr. Tiffany said the tracks just crossed a 4-foot fence that went along the railway line, and it looked like it just stepped over that fence and went off into the trees. Now, this time when they were off looking into the trees, Mr. George Chapman returned home, and he was a little upset to find his family gone. And the door off hanging on the hinge, hair tough stuck to it, and all these big footprints around it. And some men's footprints too, so he didn't know what was going on. The first thing he did was head into town to main River Creek Reserve, and he found his wife and children all huddled in the main building of the reserve, and she told him what had happened. Well, the family went back to the house. Now, if you read some of the older books on this subject, like Ivan T. Sanderson books and John Green's books, you get the impression that it tells you that they abandoned the house after that. They moved away and never came back. That's true, but they didn't do it immediately. They stayed in the house for a week. And whatever it was, they think kept coming back, but they never saw it again. Just every night around 3 or 2 in the morning, the dogs would go crazy, and they would hear this high piercing screaming like noise from outside, but they never dared to look out to see what it was. And after a week of that, they had had enough. They left the house. But the house wasn't really abandoned after that either. Other relatives continued to live there, but none of them reported anything strange. What really caused the house to be abandoned was the last great flood of the Fraser River in 1958, when this whole piece of property here was about 4.5 to 5 feet underwater, because it's right on the riverbank, and the last big flood of the Fraser River had completely turned this area into a lake. I mean, it was a mess. Half the graves in the cemetery came up, and the bodies were washed down the river with the coffins, and it was the last big flood of the Fraser, and that's what really caused it. Was water damage from that flood that caused this house to eventually be abandoned and rot away, not the Sasquatch incident of 1941, as many of the older books tell you. But it's one of our classic tales, and it has remained so. See, that's another picture taken at the time in the late 1950s. That's a photograph taken by Rennie Day property. You can see how dilapidated and how overgrown it got just 15 years after it happened. And of course, today, I took that photograph in 2009. Those are the same 2 trees. And we know they're the same 2 trees because they're both Siamese twin trees. That's one trunk with 2 stems coming out. They're rare, let alone getting 2 together. They were there in 57, and they're still there today. So we can tell where the house was when it was there on the property today. The property is now owned by a charming couple named Schneider. And that's Dave Schneider right there. Every now and then when a group of people come up here and they want to take a look at some of the old classic sites, all I have to do is phone them up and say, it's okay if I show these people the property, and they usually let us go in. Unless you're a film crew or something like that, and then you get involved in, politics of the particular First Nation and money and all that kind of stuff, because it is on reserved land. It's part of the reserve. So that's the way it looks. Now, what we did was we superimposed John Green's photograph from 1957 on a photograph taken by Barry Blunt in 2010. And it kind of shows you where the house would be if it was still there today. That's where it was. I mean, we lined up the mountains in the background. Even the snow patterns from 57 to 2010 hadn't changed that much, so it's quite easy to do. So if the house was still there, that's where it would have been. As a matter of fact, those 2 trees have grown so much, they're almost growing over. And you can always tell the tree because George Chapman always told the story of how he pushed a shovel into the V of one of the Siamese twin trees and just left it there. The shovel got overgrown and engulfed by the tree, and it's now 13 feet off the ground. And it's still sticking out. I saw it, it's still there. And some things never change, it just goes on. You can always find these things. It's probably neat. Now the Sasquatch Inn, I mean, everyone's gone there to have a burger or something, right? Great place, but it's called Sasquatch Inn for a reason, because this is the area behind it, and up north along the west side of Harrison Lake, where the name Sasquatch comes from, as I was saying earlier. This is where it all began. This is where the non-First Nation people of Canada got their name for the creature from the Chehalis people, Sasquatch. And of course, the Chehalis people have adopted the Sasquatch as a symbol of their nation. And you'll find it go up and down, you'll see this symbol all up and down there. Personally, I think it's one of the best ones they got going. Yes, dear.
every single one of them. Gone, not crumbled.
All the cookies were gone?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure with the Sasquatch or something.
There weren't any guys around.
My dad told me.
Yeah.
Like, the gravel roads and
Yeah.
like a big rock road, so probably couldn't see the.
Well, I'll tell you one thing for sure. There have been stories of Sasquatch taking food off picnic tables, out of campers, that kind of thing. It's happened before.
You mean like Yogi Bear?
Not as friendly. Yeah. Yeah, there have been stories of them shading campers, looking in windows, things like that. Yeah, that kind of thing. Like you were telling me earlier, you thought you may have seen one outside your window. Does your property back onto forest areas?
Well, when back in my grandma and grandpa's, their house is way, way far back.
Mhm.
It's like a really, like, you can barely see through it. The trees are really thick.
Mm-hmm.
So one day, my grandma and grandpa, we went out there.
Mm-hmm.
We found a few really hard, but no footprints.
You saw footprints?
No, we didn't.
No, okay. Well, if you ever do, I'll just tell you like I tell everybody. Don't go anywhere in British Columbia without a camera. Never. Anywhere. Always carry it. I don't care what type of camera it is, always have one with you. You're in a picnic area in a campground and you have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go to the outhouse, take your camera with you. You know, because that's the kind of thing and that's the kind of time it will happen. You know. And of course, if you don't get a picture, you're just another person who says he saw a Sasquatch. We have thousands of those. Now, the man you're seeing here, his name is J.W. Burns, John Wilson Burns. He was a teacher on the Chehalis Reserve in the 1920s. He was a Caucasian man, and he got a job teaching in the First Nation school on the Chehalis Reserve in the 1920s. He was also a government Indian agent. Now, he became very friendly and got to know a lot of the First Nation people there, and they got to the point where they trusted him, and they told him things. And he heard stories about this thing that they called Saskaheli. All depends how you want to pronounce it. Which they basically described as, they said, was a large race of hair-covered people that they themselves had driven into the mountains many generations before in battle. And that every now and then you would see their fires on the top of Morris Mountain. And they had a few stories of Sasquatch, especially, you know, the females, to be avoiding dread. And one story of a local lady in 1871 who claimed as a young woman she had been captured and spent a number of years or a number of months with a family of them up in a cave in Morris Mountain, who she later escaped, gave birth to a hair-covered child, which died very soon afterwards, and she lived the rest of her life until she passed away of old age in the early 1930s. And that's another one of the classic tales from that area. But J.W. Burns, he was a prolific writer. He used to write articles for local publications in Canada about life in the First Nation reserves and the areas and their culture and their legends and their own history. And he wrote an article for Maclean's magazine that appeared on April 1st, 1929, that was entitled Introducing BC's Hairy Giants. And like I said, he misspelled the word, he mispronounced the word, he called it Sasquatch. And that name caught on with the non-First Nation population in Canada, and it's been known as Sasquatch here ever since. So our name precedes the American name Bigfoot by a good 30 years. Well, 1929, 1958, yeah, 30 years. Well, that's how the name came about. A misprint and a mispronunciation by this man. There's the Three Amigos. But we also have another classic tale that got a lot of attention when it happened, but it was so far back no one really knew what they were dealing with. The man in this picture, I was there, I was holding camp. There's Bill Miller, an American friend of mine who does a lot of research on Barry Blunt, who now lives in Chilliwack, and a fellow named John, who was the curator of the museum in Yale, British Columbia. You all know where Yale is. Just thought, okay. Now here's the story of what happened in Yale. Today Yale is a town of barely 80 people. Barely 80 people. You blink, you'll miss it as you go through, as you drive north through the Fraser Canyon, North of Hope. But in 1880s, when the gold rush was on, Yale had a population of 18,000. It was a boom town. It was as far as the old steam wheelers on the Fraser River could get. They couldn't go up the river any further than that. So the old wagon road that was basically built on the side and was considered a wonder of the world in those days was built right in the cliffs north of Yale, going all the way up through the valley. Now in 1884, like I said, it was a boom town, and it was a bad town. It was a terrible place. Violence. It was a Wild West town. A lot of people like to think that somehow the Canadian West was more civilized than the American one. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. In many ways, it was much worse. There wasn't a week that went by in Yale Town without a gunfight, a stabbing, a murder, you name it, it happened. So when something like this caught attention in 1884, it was only, you know, by word of mouth, very popular in the community for maybe a week, then there'd be another gunfight or another stabbing, and people would forget about it. But in 1884, the Victoria Times columnist published an article. What is it? In which, in that article, they described the capture of a creature that was found lying unconscious along the newly built railway line that they were building right on the old wagon road, the Trans-Canada Rail line, which was still 1 year away from completion. There was still a big gap near Revelstoke at this time, so you couldn't get across the country on it yet. Still 1 year away from completion. But this section was finished, and a train coming down, heading towards Yaletown, saw this thing laying unconscious right around here somewhere, between the cliff and the track. And if you were to look to the left here, it's a sheer drop into the Fraser River, which is a torrent, no matter what time of year it is at this point. And that's tunnel number 4. And according to the article, as the train was approaching tunnel number 4, they saw this figure lying unconscious on the tracks. They brought the train to a halt, and they blew the whistle, and whatever it was sort of revived, and it started trying to climb the cliff, and the men all gave chase. And they got hung up on a ledge, who knows which ledge, but it was a low ledge, like right around here, look at that. And some of the men managed to get up above it, and they started throwing rocks down on it, knocking him unconscious, apparently, where he fell back down to the ground by the tracks, and they immediately trusted it up, tied it up, and threw it in the bags and on the rail cars, and headed into the town of Yale. The creature was allegedly removed from the train at the train yards just on the extreme north end of town. Almost the whole town was gathered in the main station to get a look at this thing, but in order to avoid the crowd, they took it off at the rail train yards on the north end of town, and they put it in a cage. Dr. Harrington, the town doctor, examined the thing, and he had no idea what he was dealing with. I mean, they said it was rather chimpanzee-like, but it had long legs like a human being. It stood just over 4 feet tall, had extremely massive arms, could bend thick pieces of wood and twist them in half, and a man could drank milk with an absolute relish. Ate all the vegetable matter to get it. They withheld meat from it because the doctor was afraid it might make them wild. But as I said, they had no idea what they were dealing with. Remember, the term Sasquatch was still years in the future, and this is 1884. So the Victoria Times columnist published this article, and the article is, what is it? Many said, because, you know, the racism of the time and stuff, they just caught a wild Indian, you know, and they wrote it off that way. They caught a weird bear, or they've caught this, or they've caught that, you know, and a lot of people later on thought the whole Jacko story, which is the name that was given to the creature, Jacko, was perhaps a bit of tabloid journalism, which was common in regular newspapers in those days, especially when it was a slow news time. I imagine in the late 1800s, there was quite a few days like that. However, newspapers usually didn't share tabloid stories in those days. And I took a look through the archives, and I found in the Calgary archives an article from the Winnipeg Free Press at the same time that basically repeated the story. So that's two different papers from Western Canada repeating the same tabloid story, and that usually didn't happen in those days. And since then, a couple of colleagues from the United States, like one from Colorado and another one from what they call the Oregon Territory, they sent out pictures telling the story of Jacko, the creature captured near Yale, BC. And again, how would the Americans hear of a tabloid story up in Canada in those days when it took weeks for anyone to hear about anything? So, but the biggest problem with Jacko is we don't know what happened to him. The men who captured him, where it was reported, were going to put the creature on display in a sort of carnival type atmosphere and make their fortune. But the only two ways to get out of there in those days was one, go to Fort Vancouver and take a steamship, or go across the border into the United States and go across the continent on their transcontinental railway, which was finished by that time. But we don't know. Famous First Nation chief, Chief Kitsilano, said he saw a creature being displayed in the Vancouver area in 1884 that he believed was Jacko. But I have not been able to find any media or any mention of such a display in 1884 in Vancouver. You'd think there would be. There's also the story of the nuns up at the nunnery in Bishop Cove that were handed this creature, and the first thing they did was shave all his hair off, and he immediately died. No way to confirm that story one way or the other. There's the popular theory introduced by the late Grover Krantz that P.T. Barnum, you've all heard that name, Barnum and Bailey Circus. He was the biggest showman in the North American continent at this time, and it's a freak show. You know, they had the Siamese twins, they had the famous Tom Thumb, the midget, they had all kinds of characters like this. And it just so happens that that same year, 1884, a few months after the so-called Jacko capture occurred, he started advertising a new attraction called Joe the Dog-Faced Boy. And Grover had the theory that perhaps Jojo, the original Jojo, was this creature. But for some reason, P.T. Barnum, after 2 months of advertisement, he never published any pictures, and all of a sudden, Jojo the Dog-Faced Boy was removed from all his advertising for a period of about 8 years. And P.T. Barnum, being a man who never let a good name lie, he used the name again and published pictures, only this time it was obviously a picture of a young man with that rare affliction where hair grows all over the body and stuff like that, and he had him dressed up as a Russian Cossack, and there's a wild story about how he was found raiding camps in the Crimea, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, P.T. Barnum's favorite line was, "There's a sucker born every minute." He's the man who tied a fish to a monkey's cadaver and called it the Fiji mermaid. You know, that's what he was. This was P.T. Barnum. And so Grover wondered what was the first Jojo. I mean, did he get his hands? I mean, if there was one man in North America at that time who would have paid good money for something like this, it was P.T. Barnum. However, if the thing died on P.T. Barnum, I wouldn't stop him. He would have probably stuffed it and put it on display anyway. There's no record of anything like that. So we don't know. That's the biggest problem with the Jacko story. We don't know what happened to Jacko. Some people say he probably died on transit, being taken to Europe or Asia on ship, and when animals died on board ship in those days, they wasted no time in throwing them overboard. There's just no, he disappeared from history. So we don't know what happened to Jacko. But that's another great classic tale from Western Canada here. And of course, one going all the way back to 1815, David Thompson crossing the Rocky Mountains the first time near Jasper. Made a note in his journal about these large footprints he found in the snow that his First Nation guides were terribly afraid of. Now, whether or not they were large bipedal tracks, we don't know. He didn't mention claw. A lot of people thought they were just a huge bear track. We'll have no idea because we weren't there to see them with them. And of course, no pictures were taken. We just have this description from his journals. And of course, that was the same year of the 8 camp, 1924, Albert Ostman. He was the man who claimed he was kidnapped, spent a week living with a family of these things up around Toba Inlet. Have you all heard that story? That was 1924. Albert Ostman was a young man. He got dropped off by boat. They headed to Toba Inlet after a few days. I'm going through this real quick. A few days, something hanging around his cab, disturbing his stuff. He decided to get into a sleeping bag fully dressed. He put his boots and his rifle in the sleeping bag, and he was determined to catch whatever it was that was going through his stuff at night. But he fell asleep. When he woke up, something was picking him up in his sleeping bag like a sack of potatoes. And it threw him over his shoulder and walked off with him. He said he was in that sleeping bag nearly dying of suffocation for almost 4 hours as it went over hill and dale, carrying him, sometimes dragging him along the ground. And when he was dumped out, he found himself in a family of 5 of these creatures. The old man, he called it, the one that picked him up, the one he called the old lady, and actually 4, excuse me, and there was one young male one and one young female one there. The young male one was very curious about him. The young female just hid from him all the time, just would peek out at him from behind bushes. And he was initially dropped off in this horseshoe-shaped canyon that had a creek running through this very narrow entrance. He saw no signs of tool use or anything. The only thing he said is they basically had what looked like vegetation mats they slept on, which he thought was more of a case of layers and layers of vegetation being crushed together rather than anything being woven. And, but by happy coincidence, the creature that picked him up in the sleeping bag also decided to pick up his backpack and drop it there. So he had some cans of food and stuff there. He said they never tried to harm him, but they wouldn't let him go. And he had no idea what they wanted. So he realized after a while that they were impersonating him. He'd make his own tea and coffee and meals by the fire, and a fire he made, and he had this tin of snuff, which is kind of like chewing tobacco. And he'd take a little pinch of it, and what he called the old man, the one that picked him up and look at him out of curiosity, take another pinch, and sniff, and then this big male Sasquatch grabbed the whole can and downed the whole contents and swallowed it. He said it wasn't long before that thing was grabbing its head and rolling over, obviously sick and in distress. And then it grabbed his coffee can, his coffee cup, and it downed all that, grounds and all. Just to try to relieve the taste it had in its mouth or whatever. And it got even sicker. So the others were paying attention to what he called the old man writhing on the ground. Ostman grabbed his pack, grabbed his rifle, and ran out the entrance to this cannon. The one he called the old lady did try to chase him. He turned and he fired one shot over her head, and she retreated. And according to Albert Ostman, he spent one night and one day wandering through the trees when he heard the sound of a logging operation in the distance. And by the time he came out, he was so dehydrated and in bad shape, he didn't tell them what had happened to him. All he said was he told them he was a prospector and he got lost. And the logging company took care of him at the camp for a day or two before they sent him back by steamboat back to Vancouver. And Albert Ostman kept the story to himself until all the publicity about the Sasquatch came out in 1957 when British Columbia was celebrating its 100th bicentennial. And there were stories going on in the press about Sasquatch. And he just said, well, I was living a week with the family, these darn things. He didn't use the word darn, but you get what I mean. And he was interviewed by John Green and Rennie DeHinnon and Ivan T. Sanderson, and he, fortunately, not too long after he came out, he wrote it all down in a scribbler, the whole story. And his attitude was that you can believe me or not, I really don't care. Maclean's magazine offered him money to publish the story. He said, no, you can publish it, you don't need to pay me anything. This is what happened, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced. If you believe me, fine. If you don't, I don't care. And he maintained that attitude to the day he died. He died in 1973. He lived his whole life in Fort Langley. I had an idea. I mean, I said, how do you try to find information on something like this if it was true? Because he came out in Salmon Arm Shell Inlet. Well, if you look at a map, the distance between the head of Tobin and that area, he had to cross 3 mountain ranges to get there. That sounded real snake.
You had to cross Seashell Inlet to get there too.
Yeah, yeah, unless he went around the northern tip of it.
You would have done that in a week.
Yeah, I know. But it all comes down to how far did this thing carry him when it first picked him up. He said it was moving the whole time. He was being dragged over hill and there while in the sleeping bag. But that's a heck of a distance. So I had the idea back in the early 80s when I was around the tip of Newton. I thought, did logging companies in 1924 keep logbooks? You know, did they make logbooks of their daily activities? So some did, a lot didn't. So I looked in the office. McMillan Boydell was still going in those days. They were in the area. There were other companies in the area. They had logbooks of other companies in the area. I just want to say, did any logbook mention of their men coming across a lost prospector in the Salmon Arm, a shelled inlet, on a summer day in 1924? Just to see. Of the 3 logbooks I looked at, none of them said anything about coming across a lost prospector in 1924 in the Salmon Arm shelled inlet. However, I also found out that even though I looked at the logbooks of 3 companies, there were 40 logging operations in the Salmon Arm area at that time. So the odds are he came out and got picked up by someone who wasn't keeping logbooks is indeed possible. All I know is I couldn't prove it. And I had another idea. In his original story, he said an elderly native gentleman dropped him off by boat at the end of Toba Inlet. Well, I always wondered, what did this elderly native gentleman do when he went back in 3 weeks? He was supposed to come back in 3 weeks and pick him up. What did he do when he couldn't find him? Did he tell the RCMP? Did he make a report of some kind? But all efforts to look into that came to a dead end. Most people said there was. Hell, most of the police officers I talked to said they had no idea. Any record of something like that happening in 1924 would have been long lost by now. So again, another classic tale. But because if you can't really follow up on any of this stuff, there's no way to check on it. But we get into modern stuff, more modern stuff, like this young lady and her child and her husband. Her husband wasn't there. The young lady was. This is Half Moon Bay, and this happened in March 2005. The lady, I'll call her Andrea, I don't know what her last name is. She, I went to interview her. She has a company in her own business in Seashell called Hot Tamales, which I always thought was an Italian restaurant or something. Turned out to be an adult store for women. So I went to interview her there, and then all the time, I imagine Randy, I'm sure glad Randy never saw me go into this place. It's the only thing I was thinking. But on the night of March 8th, 2005, she was driving home to Half Moon Bay along the main highway there with her little girl in the back seat. But she saw this thing cross the highway in front of her car, right to left. She said it was huge, and it crossed the highway in about 3 steps. And the thing is, it almost seemed to drop out of sight, like it zipped out of sight. She couldn't figure it out. Crossed the road and then gone, like in a flash. Not a flash of light, like it just gone. Couldn't explain it. So she called John Green, who called me. I was up there within a couple of days having a look at it. Took the ferry ride all the way up there. And I found out why it seemed to disappear. On the other side of the road, it's like a 10-foot drop into blackberry bushes and stuff. And only a half a kilometer from there is the Pacific Ocean. And just thick trees between the two. So that's why this thing didn't even slow down. It just hit across the road, gone. She had always heard stories of the Sasquatch. She had always believed in the creature, but she never ever thought she'd ever see one. And she said, when you see something like this, it's like seeing, for someone to come up and question the existence of the Sasquatch to her, she said, it's like someone trying to argue the existence of gorillas or rhinos. You've seen one, they haven't, but you know what it is. They haven't seen one. It's incredible. She couldn't understand how something so big, so massive, could still be basically undiscovered, unconfirmed in British Columbia, Canada. And this spot, she's pointing to where it came out. Now, when I got there a couple of days later, you could still see the trail through the grass where it come out across the line. There were no clear, distinct footprints on this spot, but you could see where something. You could see the trail there. where what she's pointing at, where something or someone had come out of the trees and crossed the road. And that's close. You see that trail there, where it came through the grass? That's where it came out, crossed the road, and there's the other side of the road. There's the drop off, and it's like a 10-foot drop there. That's why it seemed to disappear in a flash. It just dropped down into that mess, and it disappeared. She never saw it again. She never knew, she didn't think the little girl had seen anything, because the little girl didn't say anything. Well, a few years later, when we were, me and a couple of colleagues of mine were being considered to host a show here in Western Canada, which was basically going to be our version of Finding Bigfoot, show Finding Bigfoot. But it never came on the ground, got off the ground because we refused to do things like Howl at the Moon and things like that in the dark. We went there to do a pilot, and we talked to her again, but her daughter now is a 13-year-old teenager. And a few years after this happened, all her mother remembers is she said, "Mom, what was that big monkey we saw a few years ago?" And that was the first time she said it. She didn't realize the little girl had seen it. And she called it the big monkey. Now this young lady, Silver Saget Road, February 8, 2011. She and her fiance bought a house there. They're renovating, they're redoing the inside. They decided to take a break. It was one of those nice February days like we just had, where the rest of Canada is envious of us. They're freezing in 5 feet of snow, and we got beautiful spring-like conditions. And sure enough, they went out for a drive. And on the way back, coming back 5 Silver Saget Road, 5 kilometers up, she sees this thing moving off the roadside into the trees on the right-hand side. Her fiance who was driving didn't see it at that point. And he drove past the point where she said she saw it, and he looked at, they passed the trail, and he saw something further in, disappearing at that point. That's him. Now, where she saw it was disappearing right in behind this tree right here. And she said it was tall. She said it's so thick in there that its size is what really made it stand out. To give you an idea, here's her fiance standing right here. Now, until I pointed that out, how many of you didn't realize it was a man standing there? See how well you blend in? And this thing took off. He's standing right there. But the creature was on the other side of that large tree. And that's all she saw, was it taking off into the trees that way. And she said it was almost twice as tall as her fiance is, and he's 6 feet tall. That was her impression. But he didn't see it at this point. He had to wait till he got a little further on down the road where it's basically a walking trail now, but it used to be a logging road at one time. And I guess the creature, when it went off the main road, it went into the trees on an angle because it crossed that trail, and he was able to observe it down the trail before it disappeared. Well, we were there a week later, and we found some tracks. This first one right here, there had been a cold snap since, and it all refroze. And you can see this bear cat here, right at the bottom of it. Here's the track. Just under 13 inches long. They never saw the tracks, we did. And there was another one. Can you people see that? All right. And the third one. Now, not clear, distinct footprints with nice toes and everything like that, but the fact is they were almost 50 inches long, and they seemed to be walking in a straight, almost, tightrope walk line. Not too far from where they both claim to have seen this thing. Are they tracks? I don't really know, but they could be. Bridal Falls Forest Service Road. Anyone know where Mount Chimney is? Bridal Falls.
Yeah.
2008 was a very busy year. Got a phone call. Well, I found out about this first case rather roundaboutly. The man and his wife were up Bridal Falls Forest Service Road at 2 o'clock in the morning. There's a high viewpoint up there people like to go up to. You can see all the lights of the Fraser Valley down there heading towards, Mission and Abbotsford and stuff like that. You know, in a clear day, you can almost see all the way to Vancouver. Couples go up there to do what couples do. Guys go up there to take off with their gliders and things like that. They were coming down from there at 2 o'clock one morning. She was fiddling, his wife was fiddling with CDs or something in the passenger seat. And all she remembers is suddenly he grabbed her by the arm and said, "Did you see that guy?" She goes, "No, what are you talking about?" He pulled over. Hold on. He was sort of stunned. And she started, you know, questioning him. "What did you see? What did you see? What did you see?" He said, "What, was he naked?" I said, "No, he looked there." And she finally said, "Are you saying you saw a Sasquatch?" And his immediate reply is, "No, there's no such thing as a Sasquatch." He wants his name kept confidential, so I'll just call him Norm. His wife was named Bella. And Norm was the kind of man that didn't want anyone around, or any of his neighbors, or any of his friends to know that he saw a Sasquatch. So he told Bella, "Do not tell anybody what happened." But fortunate for me, Bella told her friend, who told another friend, whose husband used to work at the mill I live at, and he knew me and knew what I did. So I got the information, and I called him up. And this was like only about 24 hours after it happened. And the first thing he said, how the did you find out about that?" So I had to pay careful politics here, because I didn't want Bella to get in trouble too much. You know, we went and interviewed him. I went to his house to interview him. I went up to where it happened. He told me the whole story. And the most fascinating thing about this man, and this is the kind of witness I love, his attitude is, "I don't know what else it could have been but a Sasquatch. It fit the description of a Sasquatch, but there's no such thing as a Sasquatch, so it could not have been a Sasquatch." That's his attitude. Because he will not. Some people won't even believe their own eyes. That's a fascinating thing about this. They won't even believe their own eyes. It's just unfortunate that his wife was filling with CDs, because this thing crossed the road in like 2 steps. As a matter of fact, right over there, where you see our vehicle, and Bill, no, he's not moving the camera, he's looking at the trail we went through. That's exactly where it happened on this road. You can see where it came up. And there was a trail going straight up the hillside. This is a hill like on a 40-degree angle. I had to climb up sideways, you know. Bill had to climb up sideways holding on the thing so we didn't tumble. This thing went straight up, across the road, and carried on, plowing through the brush on both sides of the road. There's Bill pointing to the trail where it came out, and there's the trail where it disappeared on the other side of the road. Something plowed through there. I mean, it's amazing thick bush on both sides of this Forest Service road. You know, something plows through it, it leaves a wake. You know, I've seen bear tunnels and stuff where bears go through. This thing plowed right through the whole thing. So either someone or something went through on that spot where he said this occurred. That's Bill pointing to the trail and the tracks. You can see it. Something went through there. Now these 2 reporters from the Chilliwack Press, they heard of the story. They heard about it, so we had to keep their name confidential. So we took them out there to talk about what had happened and the history of the Sasquatch and stuff like that. And they wrote a story in the Chilliwack Press that was entitled, "If You Go Into the Woods Today." Well, this young man saw the story, and he said, "My God, that's the same road I saw something on the following evening." So we called him up, and his name is Ryan, and we did an interview with him. And his sighting was only barely 1 kilometer away from the one I just told you about. But when we interviewed him, we realized he wasn't talking about the following evening. He was talking about just 4.5 hours before, on June 18th, 2000. His occurred at 10:30, June 18th, 2008. Midnight rolls around, 2 in the morning. That's when Norm and Bella come down the road and see the same thing. Except he saw it going downhill. Now, 2 sightings of a similar creature, 4 hours apart, barely a kilometer apart, the same Forest Service road. It's a fair argument that they probably saw the same animal. Can't say that with any 100% certainty, but it's a fair bet that they saw the same animal, assuming that they all aren't just making it up. Now that's just him. He's standing by this nursing stuff. Now what he saw when he came around, it was his headlights illuminated this thing that had its hands up to the stump, took a look at the oncoming car, and he said it was almost comical. It was like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. He said the feet going, and it scrambled up the stump and sort of went over it and down the hill. And he said he had his windows open because it was a hot night, and he could hear it crashing through the brush as it went downhill. Now I gotta tell you, if any man had tried to do what he said this thing did, he probably would have broken a leg or something, at least, because that's a steep angle. I don't know what it could have been he saw if it was not a Sasquatch. Because he said it sort of scrambled right over the stump and disappeared. All it did was leave this gouged scratch marks. You can see them on the side of the stump. So not like it going around it. No, it sort of panicked, and you can see the feet going as it sort of went up and over the stump and down into the brush on the other side. That's Bill Miller, colleague of mine, looking right at. So 2 sightings 4.5 hours apart, on the same road, within a kilometer of each other. Fair bet. We got a sighting here by 2 different witnesses of the same animal, at least in my opinion. Now this fellow, called him Mark, September 18, 2008. This man is 6'4". He's out bear hunting 5 kilometers up Ruby Creek Forest Access Service Road. All he remembers is looking over his left shoulder and seeing this boulder spiraling through the air coming at him. Missed him. Splashed in the water in the bog right beside the road. Splashed him in the water. He looks, he sees this large hair-covered figure disappear deeper into the trees. He has no idea what it was. But the idea of Sasquatch comes to his head later on. We find out about it. He gets contact on the page that Jerry Matthews site, who contacts Bill Miller, who contacts me. We go out there, we do a search, we do an investigation. I went to his home and interviewed him about the whole incident. Look how thick this area is. This is the road where it happened. This was on the 23rd, a few days afterwards, same day. It was really thick. Now remember I was talking to you earlier something about this cut line or this new hydro line going through that park? It's gone right through the middle of this area. Everything you see in these speeches have been flattened out. Yeah. And that's the thick stuff he was going by. This little mark right here, you can't really see it, but there's nothing but water on both sides of the road. It's a big marsh. And trees. And this is where he was passing by when something threw, and you can see how thick it is. For something to be, for him to notice it moving beyond where the trees are, it must have been pretty immense in size. At first he didn't think it was that big, but when he went in there, and he's 6'4", we couldn't see him at all. So we have no idea. So we decided to do a search in the area. That's where the rock landed. It's flat, you see, and it smelled terrible in there. It smells, it's awful. It's decaying vegetation and years of leaves and vegetation rotting on top of each other. It's a swamp, to put it blunt. Now we went digging for the rock, pulling out this rock. We pulled out this beautiful rock. It's like a cannonball, it's so round. It's gorgeous. We looked at it. I said, "Is this your rock?" "No, sorry, boys, you got the wrong rock," he says. The thing I got was more elongated, kind of like, you know, and it had ends that tapered down like a football, you know, it was a long rock. "You got the wrong rock." I mean, if he was making it up, he gave him out right there. He said, "Yeah, you found it, beautiful." No, he didn't. He said, "You got the wrong rock. You got to get back in that muck and look some more." We never did find the darn rock. But we did find footprints of about 5 tracks in the area where he said he saw this thing run. I don't know if you can see that there. Here are the toes right along here. And it comes down at an angle like that. Now, I got a better picture up here. There, can you see that? The toe marks? No. our witness never saw these footprints. We found them doing an investigation in the area. He never saw them. He never knew they were there. We found them. And you gotta remember, these tracks are in bog debris. They're not in mud, they're not in sand, they're in bog debris. Layers of gunk and garbage and rotting matter. So there were tracks where this man said he saw a Sasquatch, but he never saw the tracks. See, there's close up to the toes. Can you see those toes? Yeah. And they're kind of spread out too, you know, like they're grouping the ground, which kind of makes sense in the kind of terrain this thing was walking through. Well, that's just a picture of me, Bill snapped as I was coming out with the casting we made of it. You can see how thick it was in that area. All that greenery there now is gone because they've leveled it. This fellow lived on Burns Road in the night of November of 2008. Call him Kevin. He's a saloon owner in the General Mission area. He was just heading home at 2 o'clock in the morning after closing up, and he said this thing was just standing on the side of the road. And he passed it. And it really didn't hit him until he was like almost get to the point where his driveway begins. He goes, "What the heck was that?" And, you know, it just didn't click. And when he got it, and when he drove home, and this is him describing where he saw it, except he said it was actually in the ditch and its head was higher than him. But here's the funny thing. This is the property. This is the spot where it was standing. But if you look at this sign over the driveway, the property sign, it says Bigfoot. It's actually a paintball or airsoft range that they've named Bigfoot. So I'm wondering, wait a minute. Do they have little fun Bigfoot hunts with a guy in a suit and they go shoot at him or something like that? And they said, no, they don't. And the guy was like, you tell me there was a Sasquatch seen right outside my door? And he goes, yeah, well, he said it was hoax, we didn't do it. So he's either making it up or another mystery on our hands. Now this young lady, it goes to show you how you don't always have to be back in the bush. Just south of Langley on 200th Street near the 18th Avenue turnoff. You know where I'm talking about? 200th Street. It's a beautiful road south of there. If you ever want to get into, you know, the West Coast areas of South Vancouver or, you know, down along that area, and you don't want to take the Trans-Canada Highway and pay the toll on the bridge. It's just a nice way to go. But on April 4th, 2009, this lady was heading south and she saw this figure cross the road in front of her. And she didn't know what to make of it. It was raining hard, she didn't know who would be out there. It was hot, muggy. And she said, this was a man, he was wearing a fur coat and a fur suit. She couldn't figure that out. This is where it happened. This is like the 18th Avenue turnout. That's my old Suzuki there that I had before I rolled it and nearly killed myself.
Animal Valley Park right there.
Yeah, it's not too far from there.
There's enough bush right there.
Yeah, there's also a Boy Scout camp there.
That's on 16th Avenue.
Yeah, so a lot of people think, how could a Sasquatch be seen in an area like this? Well, if you ever go there, and you go there at night, I think a whole herd of woolly mammoth could go through there between the houses and people wouldn't see them. So no, it's not surprising at all. So I asked her to draw me a little picture of what she said she saw. God, I mean, that vehicle was a great vehicle. This is what she drew for me. She saw it from the back, upright, walking, haircut, massive size. She has no idea what it was or who it was. She said, if that was a man, that was the biggest man I ever saw. Even a little close home. This charming lady, we'll call her Vera, she just lives down Highway 7 in DeRoche. Real feisty. I asked her age. She said, I'm still young enough to kick your butt for asking that question. But she was just outside. She lives in the trailer park there. She heard the neighbor's dogs going nuts. And she couldn't figure out why the dogs are going crazy. Though there had been people who said they'd seen a cougar in the area recently, so she thought that might be the reason. She went out to look. She looked towards the tire swing where the kids play at, and she didn't see a cougar in it. She saw a large gorilla-like figure standing right behind the trees looking at her. I'm standing right, I took this picture from where she was standing, and it was standing right in behind these trees there, and she could see it moving from side to side and behind these trees. Very tall. And this is an astounding sighting because it happened on September the 18th around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was an overcast, misty, rainy day, but this is like the tracks go right through town. That's the town hall right across the tracks on the other side. You know, there's always people there. There's houses there. How could something like this walk down the railway line without being seen? Well, I look at my logical mind. If this story did happen the way says it did, she's telling the truth. It didn't get there without being seen. She saw it. Maybe she was just the first after the dogs. And the thing looked at her, and she could see it clearly enough through the shadows. She said at one point, she said it almost looked like it had a wound of some kind on its upper lip. That's the only way she could describe it. She could see what she thought was a wound or something on its upper lip. She didn't know if it was a cleft or something like that. She said it looked, and it had its eyes were just open when it was looking at her. She said its eyes were just looking at her wide-eyed in amazement. So it had a, what the heck are you doing here? Kind of look on its face. And she said it just, she tried to move back. All it did was it turned around and it started walking down along the tracks. She lost sight of it along the bush. And when I went to see her and interview her, we had to tell a story. She told all the neighbors that I was here to inquire about the cougar, because she didn't want any of her neighbors knowing that she had seen a Sasquatch.
What about smell?
Smell is quite often, if you read some of the older books, you get the impression these things smell like a sulfur pit all the time.
Exactly.
I find maybe 1 in every 10 reports, if that, make any mention of smell at all. A lot of people who have claimed an odor claim to have seen the odor in the area after it had moved off. In other words, maybe it's kind of a glandular thing, like mountain gorillas have, or orangutans have, especially the males. When they feel threatened or stressed, they give off this pungent odor. And it basically hangs around the area, and you mainly detect it after it's gone, or whatever happens. A lot of people reported that with the Sasquatch. Roger Pass and Bob Ginnan reported a smell lingering in the area after it was gone. You know, but most of the time, nobody smells anything. Most of the time. Maybe it doesn't smell any worse than any other animal. It hasn't walked through a river in 48 hours. You know, who knows? Who knows? But I find, yeah, despite the older books, no, they don't smell all the time. But if they do, they smell pretty bad. I remember myself and Bill Miller once investigating. We come across this absolutely horrendous pungent odor. And I even went into the bushway trying to find it. We expected to find something dead in it. And after about 40 minutes of looking around, we didn't see anything. That was the key thing. The smell started to dissipate. And obviously if something was dead there, it wouldn't have dissipated that quickly. But it started to dissipate and fade. Was the Sasquatch responsible for it? I don't know. I didn't see anything. All I remember is how powerful that odor was. And when it just started to dissipate, it dissipated rather quickly. But there have been times I've encountered black bears that stink to high heaven. You know, most of the time they don't stink at all. You know, animals roll and stuff. You know, if it's a hot day and they've been out in it all day, they tend to smell. I don't know whether the Sasquatch gives off an odor for defensive reasons, or it's just, like I said, it doesn't smell any worse than any other animal. It hasn't walked through a river in 48 hours. But people report a strong sulfur-like smell, you know, rotting flesh smell, that kind of thing. It is reported, but it's by far the minority of old reports make any mention of it at all. Now this is an interesting report. This fellow, we call him Monkey Man, because his name is Martin. Easy-going guy, worked hard all his life, never went beyond grade 5 in school. In the summer of 2009, he had a job overlooking, keeping an eye out as a watchman on heavy equipment logging companies up the west side of Harrison Lake. If you go up to the 12-kilometer point on the west side of Harrison Lake, there's this sharp hairpin turn. If you're driving something big, you better slow it down or you're going to flip. Well, in 2009, he was heading up there to do a gate watching job when he saw this thing the size of a chimpanzee coming over the trees and run across the road in front of him. They said it took off like a shot. Bill Miller knew this man for years, and he knew what Bill did. Bill's a colleague of mine. And I said, you know, I like what you do, find it interesting. Ain't never seen anything of Sasquatch, but you know, someone dropped off a darn monkey. And he goes, what are you talking about? Someone dropped off a monkey. I saw a monkey. I said, what do you mean a monkey? But did it have a tail? Organ grinder's hat on? What are you talking about? No, it didn't. He said, it's upright. And he started asking questions, you know, with a monkey. I mean, this man, it doesn't matter if you're talking about gorillas, orangutans, or teeny little spider monkeys. It's all monkey to him. Okay? You've got a gorilla there, he'll call it a monkey. It's an orangutan, he'll call it a monkey. You know. But what he was talking about was like he thought was a chimpanzee. He said, someone dropped off a monkey up there. And finally, Bill, out of frustration, said, Margaret, what makes you think it could have been a Sasquatch? He said, it wasn't big enough. You know, Sasquatch supposed to be a big thing, 7, 8 feet tall. This thing was, you know, 4 feet high. And Bill says, you know, polar bears ain't that big. I mean, they're cute, fuzzy little cuddly things when they're born. You can put them in your pocket. You know, they grow. It was like a light bulb went off over his head. Like the thought never occurred to him. Maybe it was a Sasquatch he saw, a young one. All he knows is it came out and it dashed across the road, which really irritated the heck out of me because I've been past that spot 150 times myself and never seen anything. You know? But he did. That's Bill. Like, I'm basically taking a picture where he was, and there's Bill standing where he saw the thing, and he was barely 4 feet tall, so the creature he saw probably would have came up to just above Bill's waist. And but he said it ripped across the road. He said it crossed the road, it zipped, gone. So it obviously saw him in his car coming around the corner. Now this man, I'll call him Ed. This is one of the more recent ones. He has a cabin up in the South Shore of Pitt Lake. Everyone knows where the Rainy Road is. That's a road that goes in the south end of Pitt Lake. He has a cabin. He was coming south and he saw what he thought was a security guard because there had been a television show filming a movie on the side of the roadways in the previous week. And they had fake police cars there and stuff that would leave out there overnight. They had a security guard left there to keep an eye on. Well, when he started coming down the road, he saw this black figure crossing the road, very tall black figure crossing the road. He thought it was a large security guard crossing the road because they were pretty close to the spot where the film crew was. It was till he got a lot closer last night, but he realized there were no police cars there anymore, no trucks, no vans, they were gone. So he doesn't know what it was he saw. He said it was upright and it was jet black. He said it came out, it crossed and splashed through the trench on the left-hand side of the road, which is water about 6 feet deep, came through the tall grass, crossed the road, went through the water, and disappeared in the trees on the right-hand side, and it's also about 6 feet deep on the right-hand side of the road. But he said he was a fair distance away from it because you couldn't see any details. It was just big and black. And this occurred on July the 12th, 2013. My car is where his car was, and I'm standing about where the figure was. So that's about as far away as he was as the car is from me when he saw it across the road. And again, something went through there. There's the trail. Something went through the tall grass and left a wake behind it. We didn't do that. Something or somebody else did. Now, going out down on the West Coast, man, we see animal tracks all the time. So we know animal tracks where we see them. That's a cougar track. More cougar tracks. This was a kind of funny thing because that vehicle tracks, that's our ATV. We went through there, got out, went back a little ways. We saw the tracks in our vehicle tracks. So this cougar was following us, but we never saw it. We never saw it. I mean, you can see the width of the tire track there. That's a big cat. So he was following us, but we never saw him. So we did the only logical thing. We ate our lunch. Yeah, he followed us. And I see bear tracks out there all the time. I was on Route 4 Shores Road and a large black bear print. So I know the difference between cat tracks and bear tracks. That's a grizzly track. That was on American Creek Forest Service Road. That's a large grizzly track. By the way, anyone tells you we don't have grizzlies in this area, they don't know what they're talking about. Yes, we do. And we have some pretty big ones as well.
Either you or Bill have a picture of about Deer Lake.
Hmm?
Either you or Bill have a picture of one up above Deer Lake.
Oh, we filmed one. We nearly ran into it in our carrier.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that was up the east side of Harrison Lake, and BR 5400 with this huge bear was right on the road right in front of us. We had nowhere to go.
This is when you had the ladies with you, huh?
No, that was later. This is when we were by ourselves. I mean, this was the biggest grizzly I ever saw.
Okay.
He was Kodiak proportions. And he just looked at us, he turned sideways so we could see how big he was. You know, they do that to show you how big they are. And then he turned around and he dove into the fern top to the side of the road, and it was like he dove into water. He disappeared. You know, we never saw him again. So we did a dignified 3-point turn, or multi-point turn, that turned this RV around, and we headed back down because we didn't know if he was trying to, you know, flank us or anything like that. Because there's one room, I mean, we didn't even have bear spray on us. We just went up there to test out the new machine, Polaris Ranger. So we didn't even have bear spray on us that day. I mean, we saw the signs, we should have seen it. We saw scat there the size of dinner plates. We should have paid attention to that and not gone any further, but we didn't. We either ran into this big boy up there. And I would have been advantaged because there's one golden rule in bear country. If you're in bear country, make sure you're with somebody you can outrun. I told Bill that. He appreciated it. I can run faster than he can. But you can see the kind of country we live in Harrison, right? This is that kind of beautiful land. I mean, you go there at night, you won't see a single porch light. You won't see nothing. And people wonder if there's room up there for something like the Sasquatch to exist in British Columbia. You bet there is. This place is gorgeous. There's all kinds of room for a whole population of such animals. The perfect normal, only ever coming across people in the odd occasion. If you look at my map boards, as a matter of fact, in my office and stuff, you see every sighting report is either on a roadside, a riverbank, a lake shore, a beachfront, someplace. In other words, where people are to see them. You have this great masses of green there where there's no pins. That's not because there's no Sasquatch there, it's because there's no one there to see them, let alone report them. So Sasquatch sightings mostly occur when they come near people, not the other way around. Mount Breckenridge, the caldera, extinct volcano. Hopefully it will stay, well, not extinct, dormant. Hopefully it will remain that way. The rock slide that's up Chilliwack Lake. I got stuck up there one day the year before this, and that slide came down and took up that whole campground in the area where my vehicle was stuck. They are not planning on reopening that road. That's unfortunate because it was a great road to go down and look. It's a great shortcut, led right up to Mystery Valley, which could take you right to the west side of Harrison Lake. And now it's cut off because of this rock slide that came down in the winter 2007. Took out the campground, took out the road, and made a tsunami quite severe. This is the area near the Hope Slide, not too far from there. Beautiful valley with Jenny Britt and 2 other people have reported Sasquatch sightings in that area. Just gorgeous. Even if you have no interest in this subject at all, I mean, when you can get to go out in the country like this all the time, that alone makes it worthwhile. If you like the outdoors, go look for the Sasquatch. You may see one.
What do you think they eat?
I think they're omnivores. I think they basically mostly 90% of their diet is probably vegetation of all types. But they will not pass up a fish or a squirrel or a rabbit. I don't believe they make a habit of killing large game. If they did, I think we'd know more about them. We'd have ranchers and farmers complain about lost livestock and things like that. That doesn't seem to happen too much. I think they probably scavenge on dead things. They don't seem to have claws or canines. They're not natural predators, but they're undoubtedly big enough and strong enough to kill if they so choose to do so.
The leaves and stuff, you can't see it on any trees, any markers?
There's been a lot of people who tried baiting. I've tried it myself a few times. We've set up camera tracks, and so far I've gotten a lot of pictures of crows, pictures of deer, pictures of bear, picture of Bill Miller running away from the camera after we set it up, picture of me trying to come up and check it out. But so far, not a Sasquatch, and no one else has either. But you gotta remember, most camera traps, you're covering 100-foot space, hoping that something in almost thousands of acres is gonna walk through that 100-foot space. So it's a long shot, but still, try it, do it, you never know. Yes?
My teacher's taking our class on a field trip to this place where you can see grizzlies.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure, like, there's lots of wildlife there, so maybe the Sasquatch might come over there sometime.
Well, who knows? I just hope someone gets a picture if they do. Yeah. You know, I was saying earlier, the Americans, one thing I like about Canada is the attitude of the people is so different than that of the United States. You know, we're so laid back here. You know, we take everything with a grain of salt. That's what I love about Canadians. In America, in particular, Bigfoot's everywhere. Come stop here, have our Bigfoot burgers. Stop at the Bigfoot bar and grill, have a Bigfoot piece of pie. Bigfoot this, Bigfoot that, yada, yada, yada. Every town has Bigfoot statues everywhere. Canada, we don't have that, except for Harrison Hot Springs. It's a one town in all of British Columbia where they push the Sasquatch.
There's a big statue
Oh,
outside of a
Sasquatch.
Soyuz too, though, right? A big statue outside of a Soyuz of a Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, Adrian Erickson built that statue. Yeah, part of his defunct, gone wrong real estate project out that way. Good statue.
There's
There's a
also-
few.
Yeah, big eagle.
But here we don't have it. We don't have it as part of the the public eye of the Americans. I mean, in the United States, whoa, there's a documentary coming on about Bigfoot. That's interesting. I'll watch it. In Canada, oh, a documentary on Sasquatch. Well, that's interesting. But the Canucks are playing the Canadians tonight. I'm gonna watch that. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of thing. That's what I love here. So when someone sees something, and they're so reluctant to tell about it, I find. Whereas in the United States, the way it is now, I think a lot of people are just making up things, hoping you'll put them on Finding Bigfoot. That's why when they have those town halls and you see people putting their hands up all the time, I think half the people are there hoping to see themselves on the TV show. You know, that's one of the unfortunate drawbacks of such a program. You know, I mean, there are people that will make anything up nowadays. It used to be, just for their 15 minutes of fame. I mean, you really, really gotta listen carefully and look for the red flags. When someone's yanking your chain, and I'm not naive enough to think everyone's telling me the truth. If there is no Sasquatch, none of them, unless it's mistaken identity. That's the only two possibilities. There is a Sasquatch, and at least half the people I've talked to saw what they claim to have seen. The other half are either mistaking or making it up. Or there is no Sasquatch, and they're all either mistaking or making it up. Because those are the only two possibilities. I am in the camp of a biological creature, a creature of flesh and blood that's been here and it still is here and it's still continuing. I am not into this interdimensional, shape-shifting, time-traveling, super goblin rocket man that so many talk about. And all you gotta do is listen to Coast to Coast radio for a month and you hear all that garbage. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, like I said, 98% of what you see on YouTube is that kind of nonsense. And it's true. And I don't go out and howl at the moon like a moron. Like, ooh, all that stuff you see them doing. Saying, oh, we're calling Sasquatch. And listening for a reply.
Yeah. Like the big
And they'll do
website.
that. Yes, ma'am.
Could you show us the Patterson footage?
Yes, I have it here.
Good.
I put this one.
Does anyone not know what the Patterson Gimlin film is?
On this area. We don't hear much about Sasquatch in Montreal.
Would you stand up, please, ma'am? I want everyone to witness that I met somebody who did not know about the Patterson Gimlin film. I never thought I'd ever seen
Well, I've let
it.
a
Thank you. You
very
made my day.
protective
You made my day. A friend of mine named Bob Gimlin, who's still alive, was friends with Roger Patterson, and they went down to the Bluff Creek region in Northern California, and they were there looking for evidence on October 20th, 1967, Roger Patterson was carrying a spring-wound Cine Kodak K100 60mm movie camera. The horses bolted, panicked when they detected this thing in their presence. Roger managed to get the camera. Unfortunately for us, Roger only had 952 frames left in that roll of film when he started filming the subject, because he had taken so many scenic shots beforehand and stuff like that. It's known as the Patterson-Gimlin footage. Roger lost his horse, the pack horse was lost, they took off. Bob Gimlin managed to control his horse, and he remained mounted during this whole incident. It was Bob that really got the good look at it. If you ever look through the eyepiece of the Cine Kodak K100, it's like looking through a pair of binoculars backwards. I don't know how Roger could have seen anything. And you gotta remember, this is 1967, right? Home movie cameras were quite different than the nice camcorders we have today. And there was sure a difference in film quality between professional and amateur. I mean, all you were old enough to remember those old movie cameras, and those remember their old parents' home movies. That's what we're talking about here. People say it was a badly blurred film. It's not really. It's no worse than the Zapruder film, who filmed the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963. You know, that's the kind of quality we're talking about here. Now, Roger pressed the button, and he was running as he was filming, so you'll notice it's very jumpy. I'll show you the film in proper speed here. The copy of the film I have is a first-generation copy from the camera original itself. It's a copy of John Green. I have special permission to display this, okay? And I ask that all video cameras monitors be shut down.